So I'm so glad to have back with me my good friend, Reverend Stephanie Duzant. She is an elder, an ordained elder in the AME tradition, working remotely with a church in Queens,
Mhm.
all the way from Nevada. And my good friend, who we didn't know each other in seminary, but we missed each other, I guess, just by a couple of years,
Yeah.
an alum of a great school, Union Theological Seminary, which we were just talking about,
Yeah.
which had James Cone and Reinhold Niebuhr and
Yeah.
Dolores Williams and Phyllis Tribble.
Yeah.
And now it has Cornell West and Michelle Alexander
Yes.
and William Barber. Um,
Yeah.
so
I'm
that's
sad. Yvette Flunder had been a visiting professor too. Yeah.
so I want to thank you for this week when every pastor should be taking off
Right.
to make time because we wanted to catch Kwanzaa. But you were just going to tell me kind of your story of how you got introduced to Kwanzaa.
So I was a college student, and really, I want to give credit to my brother Herbert Duzant. He was more in tune with culture than I was when we were younger. He's 4 years younger than me, and so when he started getting into the culture, he introduced the family to a lot of things, and so we learned about Kwanzaa. And but I will give credit to my mother too and my parents. They did a lot and to teach us about African and Black culture, uh, Pan Africanism, why it's important um, that Black people be united internationally. You know, we should
Mm,
not be separated because you're from the Caribbean or you're from Africa,
mm,
that we're all Black people together. And so I learned about Kwanzaa when I was in college. I went to New York City Technical College in Brooklyn, New York, and I thought it was so important that there was a holiday that celebrated Pan African Black culture. And so we learned about Dr. Mulanga Karenga and the seven principles, which is the Nguzu Saba, and that is Swahili. He used Swahili words. So my mother, because she was Pan African herself, embraced it too. And so we used to have ceremonies at our house every year. On New Year's Day, we used to have gatherings.
mm.
Um, and it was a great time because we invite the community, our family. It helped us to be united. It helped us to work and support each other, and especially in a day and age like this, where there's so much racial disparity,
Mhm.
um, and people reading things wrong, thinking Black Lives Matter is this nationalist terrorist, and it's so not, you know. And so to help young African American, young Black children to have a sense of pride in who they are as individuals, especially as a community. So I do think it's very important.
The only time I've ever seen a public event, when we were in New Jersey, there was something in Teaneck
Mm-hmm.
that they called First Night or First Day.
Okay, right.
So I think it was kind of a public, it's probably the only time I've seen like a public Kwanzaa event. I guess it's more like a family kind of a household thing.
Yeah, it's funny because um, in the early 90s, you know, not many Black churches were embracing Kwanzaa,
Mm, mm, mm,
right? And so, because I was in the church, I wasn't clergy at the time, but I was, you know, in the church and I was leadership in the church. I kind of had to show that Kwanzaa had biblical principles,
mm, mm,
you know.
mm,
Um, and so one year I took different scriptures and put it to each principle
mm, mm,
to show, you know. Then you had to do the church history, and you had to show that we come from Africa. We're a part of, you know,
mhm,
our religion started in Africa.
mhm,
Christianity started
mhm.
in Africa.
Yeah.
And so um and over the years, it's good to see how churches now embrace Kwanzaa.
Mm, mm,
But I think that has to do with clergy, Black clergy, uh, who were engrossed in community
mhm,
as well as
mhm.
church.
So let me share your Facebook page and see.
This company, Kinara's Children, I started seeing them about 2 years ago, and I like that they use the images of children to express each day's principle. So there's an official Kwanzaa website also. It is officialkwanzaawebsite.org. So this is the website. And so these are the symbols. And so 7 basic principles. The primary symbols is the crops. These are symbolic of African harvest celebrations and of the reward of productive and collective labor. So you set out your mat, right? This is the symbol of tradition and history, and therefore the foundation on which we build. And then you have the Kanara, which is the symbolic of our roots, our parent people in the continental Africans. The Muhindi, which is the corn, and the symbolic of children and our future, which they embody. And the unity cup, this is symbolic of the foundational principles and practice of unity, which makes all else possible. And then you have the 7 candles, Mashuma Saba. These are symbolic of the Nguzu Saba, the 7 principles, and the Zawadi, which are the gifts. These are symbolic of the labor and love of parents and the commitments made and kept by children. And so you would set this up. You'd have your mat and your crops and your corn and your kanara and your cup, right? And so you set that out. And so each day you light a candle, you talk about the principle, and the unity cup, to use it to pour libations. So I would have a plant. It will usually be an African violet. And each day we talk about the principle. We pray, we say a prayer because we're Christians, and we do a libation. Then we could look at the Nguzi Saba, right? Nguzi Saba, which is the 7 principles. And so it's from December 26th to January 1st. So you're doing it for 7 days. So the first one is Umoja, which is unity, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Kujijakalia, which is self-determination, to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility, to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. Ujama, which is cooperative economics, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses and to profit from them together. Nia, which is purpose, to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. Kuumba, which is creativity, to do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. Imani, which is faith, to believe with all our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. And so the principles are important because this is what we live by. And I can't help, but think about in Jeremiah 29, right? After the exile of the Israel by the Babylonians and the instructions that God gives to them as they now have to live in this foreign land, right? In exile. And of course, African Americans have been in this country for over 400 years, but the way that we got here, the way that we came here is a form of exile. We were taken from our homes, our names were taken from us, our culture. So to know who we are and to embrace who we are, these principles are along the instructions that God gave to Israel when they were in exile. Told them to build homes and to take wives and to have children and to plant crops and tend them and to have a life and to have a righteous life. And so these 7 principles are like the instructions that God gave to Israel when they went exile. So these are instructions as Black people, how we will live in this land, how we will live, and not just in America, right? You have Blacks in Europe, you have Blacks in the Caribbean, Blacks in South America, not just North America, Blacks in Africa. And we talk about the Blacks in Africa because of the colonization that was done in Africa, right, by the Europeans. And even you have Blacks in Asia. And so once we identify and embrace our African roots, who we are, right, as African descendant people, and also look at the racist system that affects everybody. Can I say that? Not just Black people, but affects everybody. But if Black people who subjected to this overtly for centuries embrace these principles, it helps us, right? And in helping us, it helps the overall community, right?
Did you get Nicole Hannah Jones's new book? The 16.
I haven't gotten it yet.
Somebody gave me one, and then I saw that there's a children's book.
Yes, I'm getting both. Let
me show you the children's book.
Yes.
Talking about the origin and the story.
Yes. Okay.
So just as you're talking about the origin and the story, so this is the children's book, which is very much the same, just told in a narrative. I mean, it's not kind of a simple vocabulary. It's kind of detailed.
Right.
The artistry is just beautiful.
I'm a fan of children's books. I'll be honest with you. I have a whole library.
Yeah.
And I think many adults need to read. There's many children's books out there that many adults need to read. And I think this is one of them.
One page is what Grandma tells me. They say our people were born on the water, but our people had a home, a place, a land before they were sold. Talks about life before the Middle Passage.
Right.
A couple of pages.
And I think that's important that, there was a life in Africa.
Yeah.
Before Africans were enslaved. There was a whole life. And can I say, not just a life or a way, Africans by themselves, that Europeans, that Asians, that people from the Americas were interacting with Africans long before 1619.
Yeah.
Which is how the system of slavery comes, because of this interaction that was had for years before that.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about that. Who were Africans in the world before 1619?
So that's Nicole Hannah Jones with Renee Watson, illustrated by Nicholas Smith. So it's not a long book, but it talks about before the Middle Passage, the Middle Passage, after the Middle Passage, up to today.
Yes.
It's really quite nice.
Yes. But I want to say, because it's Kwanzaa, I buy from African-American booksellers. I try to make it a point of doing that because cooperative economics. And so, I think Kwanzaa is important. Just like Hanukkah is important to the Jewish community. Ramadan is important to the Muslim community. I pray in the spirit of the Maccabees a lot, God extend resistance and extend my oil. Sometimes you need an extension of things in your life. When people tell you, this is, you can't do anymore. I think that culturally, we have to look at what's important to a culture and why it's important. And Kwanzaa is important to African Americans, important to Black people around the world, because it unifies us in this struggle. And it helps us to appreciate who we are, especially in a world who doesn't appreciate us so much, you know, and it helps us show up better. Because of Kwanzaa, you and I can sit here and have this conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It helps us, and it helps the community overall. And I wish people would see that that when people are able to celebrate who they are, apart from a collective, you know, it helps people show up better in community. I'm very pro these 7 principles in my everyday living, you know, not just for these 7 days. It's my everyday living.
Stephanie, I want to thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say thank you for asking me to have this conversation, which is so important.
I did this last year with Joan Grajewa Thomas. She's a local person in the Port Chester community. She did it with her daughter. So I want to thank you. I'm going to let you get back to your Christmas break.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And I hope we can make time to talk about the letter from a Birmingham jail.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's important.
So
That's an
I'm going to keep trying to see if I can get a group together to talk about what that letter means. And especially as we're coming to the anniversary of January 6th.
Right.
And
exactly.
Dr. King's
and
birthday.
Dr. King's birthday, yes.
But those two things together, I think, make it very important to talk about, you know, that this country has a history of protest. And some of that protest is the Boston Tea Party, which was actually a violent criminal action.
That's right.
And other parts of our protest history are nonviolent active resistance.
Right.
So Dr. King, you know, gives the all-time great elaboration of what that means.
Yeah, it was a great, you know, I've heard it and I've read it, but I was in Dr. James Cohn's class, and we had to discuss it in the class, and the impact of that letter.
Yeah.
Right. And we as clergy people, right, and that a group of clergy people would get together and tell him he needed to, you know, basically calm down, you know, stop all of this. That clergy people, right, people who believe in God and are supposed to be preaching the word and leading people, would not understand the significance of what he was doing, and then the way he so eloquently put them in their place, you know, set them straight.
Eloquent, and I think a lot of people need to realize that he didn't have Google. He didn't have his library.
That's right. He was in jail. That's exactly right.
He didn't have notepaper or a typewriter or.
That's right. That's right. This is who he was.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah. So again, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Yes.
Happy 5th day of Christmas.
But okay, take care.
Take care. God bless.
God bless.